Welcome. Thank you for coming. We're going to be talking about email stuff today. This is normally not my area of research, but this thing sort of fell in my lap, so I started talking about it. Specifically, this research, which I affectionately dubbed Spam Channel, basically it's a series of business decisions from a vendor that allowed anyone really to spoof all of the emails from all of their customers' domains, and they had over 2 million customers. One of which was the official Church of Satan website, hence the virtually becoming Satan part of this talk. There are going to be a couple of disclaimers throughout this talk. First one being I'm going to be going super fast because there's a lot to talk about, and I wanted to present this as like a story because it's more entertaining for everybody. Quick who am I slide though. My name is Marcello. I go by Bike Leader a little bit everywhere. I previously worked at SpaceX and Black Hills Information Security. I'm a generalist at this point. I've done open source development, research, security engineering. My wheelhouse is sort of Microsoft technologies, but like this presentation is completely outside of what I usually research. And I've also created a number of open source tools, which you can check out on my GitHub. So let's get right into it. So second disclaimer, don't do crimes. I put this because this can be easily abused still to an extent. So please don't. You're just going to get in trouble if you do crimes. We don't want to do that. How did this all get started? I just wanted to send an email, albeit programmatically and through a Cloudflare worker. And if you're asking why I needed to do that, it's because I built the entire of a backend website using Cloudflare workers. And if you're not familiar with Cloudflare workers, are the Cloudflare people here? Nope. Okay. Well, I'm expecting a check from them from all this.
They're a sponsor.
Yeah, I know. I'm expecting a check from them from the free publicity. The Cloudflare workers, they're basically similar to AWS Lambdas. It's a serverless computing platform built by Cloudflare. The only big difference between Cloudflare workers and AWS Lambdas is that you can only write them in TypeScript, JavaScript, or WebAssembly, and it's edgy. It's like it's an edge serverless computing platform. So your worker code gets automatically distributed through Cloudflare CDN, and whenever people hit your worker, they'll automatically get served the version of it that's closest to them geographically. So it's like latency optimized. From my understanding, that's really the only difference between this and like something like AWS Lambdas. And this is a quick Cloudflare Worker 101. I'm not going to go into this, but it's basically you just run a few commands to get started with some Cloudflare tooling that they provide. And bada bing, bada boom, you got a URL that's HTTPS enabled, which has your worker ready to go that people can access and enjoy whatever you're building. And if you want to know, there's a link there too if you want to get started. And on the bottom, let me see if I can use this fancy new thing that I just figured out. On the bottom right there is an example of like a hello world service. So if you do these things and use that as your worker code, you go to that URL that's publicly available, you'll be getting a hello world back. And the clicker stopped working, so I'm just going to use a second. There you go. So more context. This is late at night. I'm a little drunk. And I want to get this website working as fast as possible. I built this entire back end, and I'm just blindly Googling at 1 a.m. like how to send email with Cloudflare workers because I just want to get this done for the night. And I come across this blog post from Cloudflare himself saying, hey, you can send emails with workers using something called mail channels. I don't know what mail channels is, but I don't care at this point because all I want to do is get this working. And the blog post has code. Fantastic. I love blog posts with code. So I take this piece of code, plop it into my Cloudflare worker, and works first try. I get an email. Amazing. I don't really care how this works. We're going to be revisiting that code in a second, so don't worry. At this point in time, I don't really care how this works. I just want to send an email. Mission accomplished. This email did go to my spam inbox, which is sort of normal because I didn't set up any of the email security requirements or anything like that. So this seems somewhat okay, and I got it working. Mission accomplished. So I leave this, come back a couple of days later to finish things up, and I noticed that in all the gazillion tabs that I had open from the other day, there was this comment thread going around about this mail channels, whatever that is, and Cloudflare, this partnership they had going around. And this particular comment caught my curiosity. Specifically, this person's asking, so basically, using this feature, does this allow anybody using the Workers platform to impersonate me and send emails from my domain? And I'm like, that's very sus, as the kids in America say these days. Why are you even asking that question? Like, what prompted that? Like, what's going on here? And then there's the people from mail channels in the comments section. Hey, so this is just how email works. Like, not our problem, unfortunately. And I'm like, okay, wait, I'm obviously missing some context here. What's going on? So I keep Googling and I find other people just asking the same question. And the mail channel is always replying the same thing. I still don't know what mail channels is. And then there's other people asking very important questions like, hey, this is free? Like, you're not monetizing this? Like, you're just letting people just send emails through your service? Like, no monetization at all? And mail channels are like, yeah, we don't really care. Like, yeah, mail, email is great. Just use it. So they're literally going full Joker here, where it's like, we don't care about the money, we just want to send a freaking email. So going back to the code, at this point, I'm completely nerd sniped. And I go back to the code that I just drunkenly copy pasted in my worker code, like Cloudflare Worker a few days before. And I take like a long look at this for like a good 2 minutes. And for those of you not TypeScript inclined, which I envy you, this basically all this is doing is making an HTTP post request to some mail channels API with the contents of the email you want to send. What's fishy about this? What's really weird? There's no authentication whatsoever. Like, there's no password, there's no API key, there's nothing. So you're just like, how does this even work? So I dig into this a little bit more, and it turns out this mail channels, which again, I still don't know what the hell this is, in this Cloudflare partnership, entailed mail channels creating an API that allows anybody to send emails that have a Cloudflare account. So the twist is, it doesn't have any authentication. But the twist is that this API endpoint is allowed listed to the Cloudflare IP space. So you'll only be able to access it if you're coming from a Cloudflare IP. But the thing is, everybody can come from a Cloudflare IP through the Cloudflare Worker platform, because everybody can just create a Cloudflare account for free, right? So the TLDR is anybody can just send emails through this thing called mail channels without any sort of authentication or subscribing or paying or anything like that. So all you have to do really is create a Cloudflare account and just create a Cloudflare Worker with that code that I just showed you, and you can just send email through mail channels. For free. That's really weird, right? And I'm like, okay, I still don't understand why this that's really weird, but I still kind of don't understand why that allows people spoofing, and I don't understand why that person originally was asking all these questions about impersonating people with email. So I dig into the same comment section, and there's this person that goes by Isangans, who wrote a Cloudflare Worker that demonstrates this functionality. So, what this is here on the right is this thing that he wrote, and it's literally just a Cloudflare Worker. I blocked out the URL because I don't want y'all running up his Cloudflare bill. But you go to that URL, and it just serves you an HTML form with all of the details of the email that you want to send. Then you click submit, and it just sends the email. So, okay, I'm like, well, this is great for testing purposes to see if there's anything here worth looking at, because so far I still don't understand how this allows people to impersonate emails. So a few test cases that come to mind, right? First test case is, how about we send an email from a domain that doesn't even exist, right? So I put in test.waterhogger in that HTML form as the sender. Waterhogger is not a domain that exists, at least at the time it wasn't. And I get an error back saying, failed to send email. That's expected. If that worked, we'd be really messed up. How about a domain that does exist, but I don't control? So as a sender, I put in test.example.com. I don't control example.com. It's a valid domain though. And I get null back. Yay. I don't know what null means. But turns out null means it worked. And I do get an email, again, like what happened to me before when I was playing around with it. It goes to my spam inbox though, again. And if you look at the headers, it says SPF and DMARC both failed, which, again, completely normal. I'm not sure what the hell people are talking about with the whole impersonating thing at this point. So I'm like, okay, the only thing left to try here before it's 2 a.m. again. I completely, this night is completely shot because they would nerd snipe me. Let's try the third obvious test case, which is how about we try to like send an email from a domain that actually uses this freaking thing called mail channels, which I still don't know what it is. So I Google websites that use mail channels. And at this point, I'm expecting, I've never heard of this. I'm expecting it's like some bottom of the barrel mail service that, 3 people use and your grandma from like 1890 was using. I wasn't expecting that much, but that couldn't be further from the truth. So it turns out there's over 2 million domains that actually use this thing, which is a lot. And if you take a look at the websites who tend to use it, you'll see that there's not a lot of good ones. Like you'll find that it's basically every sort of kind of website uses this service. The only real good ones that I saw immediately from this builtwith.com website was boston.gov. That's a fun one. Notepad++ is also a fun one, right? So I'm like, okay, well, obviously boston.gov is going to be my first try here because, go big or go home. I also love the little filters that this builtwith.com website gives you, like all sites that have a revenue of over $1 million. That's fantastic. I love that. That's the kind of stuff that I want. But it turns out I didn't even need to do that because if you go to Mail Channel's website, they also have a list of all their customers there. So I could have just gone there and saved myself all this trouble. But in any case, I put in lobsters at boston.gov and goes straight to my inbox. And not only does it go straight to my inbox, but it also passes SPF and DMARC. And at this point, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I'm not going to, obviously, I'm not going to confirm or deny, but if you put like mayor at boston.gov there, that would have worked as well. I'm not going to confirm or deny doing that. Then I just spend the rest of the night just sending myself humorous emails because, of course, I had to do that for at least, a couple hours before I completely understand what the hell's going on here. So at this point, I'm like, okay, this is absolutely FUBAR. What the hell is mail channels anyway? Like I've been saying, I don't even know what this is. So it turns out mail channels is an email transactional service. And just so we're on the same page, email transactional services are basically services that give you a way of sending automated emails. So these are your password resets, these are your email confirmations, these are your general notifications, your newsletter type stuff. They're just emails that go from robot to human, okay? And Mail Channels provides a service that allows you to automate sending these emails. But what's really interesting is that they're it wasn't really clear what their business case or niche was, and it still isn't from their website. Only after talking to the CEO was there any sort of clarity. However, they're also marketing themselves like a cybersecurity company because it's not only we send emails, but we also stop spam somehow. I'm not going to tell you, but trust us, And also, it turns out Mail Channels is its own little multiverse. There's some comments on their website that I've never seen before. There's people putting their RDP credentials in the comment sections and asking them to help them. It's absolutely fantastic. It's just its own little microcosm of stuff going on over the Mail Channels dimension. But Mail Channels is a big player. It turns out Mail Channels has 42% of the market share, and they have more popular than services that I knew of, like SendGrid, Mandrill, and Mailgun. Those are services that I knew of. Turns out Mail Channels has more than double the amount of customers that these services have. So at this point, I was like, okay, I need to come up with some sort of, understanding of what's going on here. And to do that, we need to talk about SPF. So what is SPF? Really quickly. SPF is just a security control that you can set on the from field in SMTP. So what you need to know is that in every email that you receive, there's actually 2 from fields, one that you can't see and one that you do see. The one that you can't see is in SMTP itself. And SPF is just an allow list that allows you to say, hey, these IPs and these host names are allowed to send email on my behalf. That's all it does, okay? So it's a control on the from field that you can't see when you receive the emails. And this is what a SPF record looks like in practice. Fortunately, unfortunately, because this is it can get complicated really fast. And this was boston.gov SPF record at the time. And you can see all this is really is just a list of IP addresses and host names, right, that are allowed to send the emails on boston.gov's behalf, right? But what's funny is that I took a look at this and I saw this include statement here, relay.mailchannels.net. So they're basically saying, hey, Mail Channels is allowed to send emails on behalf of boston.gov. Well, that kind of makes sense, right? that at least that makes sense because, you have to use the service somehow, right? But here's the thing. Turns out all mail channels customers are instructed to include that in their SPF record. So, because it's just part of the setup process. But this means also that all of their customers are allowed to spoof each other because they all have the same SPF record, right? And it's sort of acting as an open relay now with this Cloudflare partnership, because now anybody can just host a Cloudflare worker publicly and just allow people to send emails through mail channels. So now anybody on the internet can technically send emails and spoof all of mail channel's customers, right? And I'm like, okay, well, this seems ridiculous, but this is almost too easy. Like, how has nobody ever thought of this? And turns out, yes, like people have been complaining about this since at least 2016. Like, I've seen forum posts from people going through the same like mental gymnastics, saying, wait a second, if hosting A uses mailchannels.com in their SPF record and hosting B uses mailchannels.net in their SPF record, can't they spoof each other? Like, isn't this a problem? And then, like, again, Mail Channels has been in the comment section saying, yeah, in this scenario as described, it is definitely possible, but the benefit of using us is you just call us and we block the spammer. That's fantastic. That's great. I've been in this industry long enough where I wouldn't be surprised if someone argued that customer support is a valid security control. So I'm not gonna, but this is fine moment for me. So I reach out to them. They don't have an official security vulnerability reporting channel. So I reach out to them via email and saying, hey, I found this thing. Like, you obviously know about it because I've seen you from 2016, like, commenting in this. But can you double check, like, this is what you want? Because it seems weird, especially with the whole Cloudflare partnership thing. And they get back to me almost like 2 minutes later. This person must have had this email on speed dial, because I've never had an email this fast get back to me. And he was like, yeah, so this is completely normal. It's a feature. We encourage people to use DKIM and DMARC to not allow people to impersonate each other. And also, the way he phrased this made me question myself, because it made me feel dumb. And I'm like, wait a second, is this just how other services work? Like, is this the state of things? So it turns out no. If you use SendGrid and Mailgun, they have a bunch of stuff that prevents this from happening, specifically sender identity verification, which is similar to a Let's Encrypt challenge, the way you issue TLS certs with Let's Encrypt. You basically have to put a DNS text record in your domain and verify that you own the domain before being allowed to send emails through that domain, right? So if you were to attempt the same thing that I just did with mail channels with SendGrid, you'll find that you won't be able to do it, because you'll get a response back from the API saying, hey, this from address does not match the verified sender identity. You need to verify you own this domain before we even allow you to send emails from it, right? So this is how they get around having the same SPF record in all of their customers. They actually verify that the people trying to send emails own the domain they want to send emails from. So this got me all sorts of confused. I'm like, okay, well, this kind of makes sense, but still I don't have the full context. So I reach out to Rapid7, because at the time I knew they had this project called Project Sonar. And Project Sonar Rapid7 is basically, they scan the entire internet via HTTP, SSH, DNS, and they collect all the info. And for research purposes, you can get access to it. And these people were kind enough to allow me access, and they also helped me with the research. So they're very good people. And you should, so a big shout out to them. So we went through all the Project Sonar data, and turns out that builtwith.com website originally was correct. There are over 2 million domains that use this service. And at this point, Rapid7 reaches out to them too, because they're like, hey, so we're collaborating with Marcello, because helping him with this research. Just so we're on the record here, you still don't think this is a problem, right? And the CEO gets back to us saying, hey, basically all of our customers are web hosting providers. So we actually can't verify that they own the domains they want to send emails from. So this kind of now starting to make sense. So it's a feature. It's not a bug. So Mail Channels basically has found this business niche where their main customers are web hosting providers that host other people's domains, right? And these web hosting providers need a way to send emails through their clients. So Mail Channels is like a middleman that builds this email service on top of that. So it's completely a feature. And you're probably wondering, like, okay, well, if they don't do sender identity verification and they can't verify that, the people own the domains that they want to send emails from, how do they stop it from being the Wild West? And this is their we block spam thing. So basically, they have a series of compensating controls in place, or at least they say, that does a bunch of this stuff. So like they do math, IP domain reputation, they do signature checking. The CEO also said they do OCR. So like they turn the email into a picture and they compare it to other emails via machine learning. I'm not exactly sure how that works. And they also analyze the email responses to gauge if the receivers like the email. So I was wondering, like, wait, so this means if I tell somebody to go like screw off, like, does that mean that they get blocked? Like, I'm not sure how that works. I couldn't tell you if any of these things are accurate or not, because in none of our testing, none of our emails were blocked. We sent, between me and Rapid7, we sent around like 150 test emails. None of them were blocked. I also did try sending a legit, like I was worried for a second that like the test emails that we were sending weren't like a legit test case. So I literally sent myself like an actual phishing email with a link to an executable. That didn't get blocked either. It went right through. So I don't know if any of these compensating controls actually work. However, the CEO also said something very interesting as well. He said that the domain owners are welcome to secure their domain against impersonation by signing messages with DKIM and setting up an appropriate DMARC policy. This is very interesting. So he's saying that DKIM and DMARC makes this entire SPF situation not a problem whatsoever. But here's the thing, though. Remember our lobsters@boston.gov email? You can see we passed DMARC as well. So that doesn't seem to check out what's going on here. And then now this is where we talk about DMARC a bit, so we're all on the same page. So DMARC allows you to set a security control on the from field that you actually see in the email. So as SPF allows you to set it on the from field that you don't see, DMARC allows you to set it on the from field that you do see. And when we talk about DMARC alignment, all we're really talking about is basically saying, hey, does the from field that you do see match the one in SMTP? And additionally, does it match on any domain with any DKIM signature with the email as well? So that's basically what DMARC does in a nutshell. So we're like, okay, we need to figure out if that's true or not, if DMARC actually does stop this from happening. And we go through Project Sonar again, and it turns out out of all of their 2 million domains that they have, only 407 of their clients actually have a DMARC record in the first place, okay? And out of those 407, only 105 of them actually have DKIM. So this whole encouraging people to set up a DMARC and DKIM record isn't really working that well, seems like. And we're like, okay, so wait, we need to actually see if we can spoof an email from a domain that has DKIM DMARC set up. So what we do is we go through all of them. Out of the 107, we pick this gits.com domain. I have no clue what they do, but they're serious about email. They have DMARC set up, they have SPF set up, they got DKIM set up, and they have like reject on everything. So like if anything fails, you won't even get the email. You won't even know there's an email. Like it'll all be set this strict. It's all fine. Like they configure their stuff correctly. So we try to spoof this domain, and it goes right to the inbox. So at this point, like it's like, what the hell is going on here? So here's the kicker. So it's because we're guaranteed to pass SPF, because this allows you to basically just send emails through Mail Channel's infrastructure, and all of their clients have that include relay.mailchannels.net property in their SPF. We're guaranteed to always pass SPF. DMARC, turns out, will pass as long as SPF or DKIM passes. So it's an or, it's not an and. So basically what this means is that because we're guaranteed to pass SPF, we're also guaranteed to pass DMARC. So even if you did set up DKIM and DMARC correctly, it doesn't matter. Like you'll always be able to spoof emails from those domains either way. And it turns out there's also no proper way to actually strictly enforce DKIM from the receiver side. Like that's not a thing. That's not something that you can do or set up. There is apparently some like new proposal going out in the IETF that would allow you to do that, but right now that just doesn't exist. And you can prove this really easily as well. Like we went through all these mental gymnastics, but you can just send the spoofed email to like mailtester.com, and it gives you almost a perfect score. Like the only thing it bumps you for is that the message isn't signed by DKIM, but that doesn't matter because we passed SPF and we passed DMARC. So 9 out of 10. Still doesn't matter. And you're probably wondering, okay, what else could there be? There's more. Turns out we take a look at the email and we see a bunch of headers that we don't know what the hell these are. And we're like, what's this ARC stuff? What's ARC seal? What's ARC message? ARC authentication results? What is this? So there's more to this story. And let me introduce you to something called the authenticated receive chain. The ARC is a proposed RFC. It's experimental still. It was published in 2019. It was originally drafted up in 2016. But ARC essentially was made to solve the problem of email forwarding, because you could technically like use DKIM for email forwarding, but that breaks because email forwarding services like to add like an unsubscribe link to all of your email, change the body. That completely breaks DKIM because it's a way to digitally prove that the message hasn't been tampered with. So ARC was introduced in order to solve this problem. And the whole thing about ARC is chain of custody. So ARC guarantees that a message hasn't been tampered with throughout what they call the ARC chain, which is just basically every server that the email gets sent through, okay? But ARC has a very interesting feature, which basically allows the receiver end to look at the results of SPF and DKIM and override those results depending on what's in a specific header, okay? So you can probably see, hopefully, where we're going with this. But also it turns out ARC, even though it's experimental, has been adopted by all of the major email services. So like Gmail, Zoho, Fastmail, ProtonMail, which I didn't know, apparently adopted all of these. So these all support ARC. And this is what sort of ARC looks like in practice. So the email gets sent from server to server. Each server adds a new set of headers that are defined in the ARC RFC, specifically the AAR header, the AMS header, and the AAS header. For the purpose of this talk, we're just going to talk about AAR header because that's the most important, because that records the results of SPF, DKIM, and DMARC every hop in the ARC chain, right? And depending on that header, the receiver, which is in blue, will be able to determine if the message is spoofed or not, basically. And this is what an ARC header is supposed to look like according to the RFC. So in this case, like, it records that SPF, DKIM, and DMARC all passed, which basically would tell the receiver, hey, this message checks out, everything is good to go. This is what an AAR header sent through mail channels looks like. So as you can see, like, there's nothing here that tells you anything. Like, this is like off that pass. I don't know what off, like, there's no off here. I don't know what's going on. Where's my SPF, DKIM, and DMARC checks? And at this point, we're just like, why can't you just be normal for heaven's sake? And so they don't record the SPF, DMARC, and DKIM header, which means that the person receiving the email or the service receiving the email, it's just unexpected behavior. Like, they just won't know if this email is valid or not. Like, they won't know if it's actually properly forwarded or spoofed or anything. And what's funny is that there's already like some documentation on a bunch of vendor products like Fortinet that allow you to basically override the results of this through ARC. So technically, like, if you sent an email through mail channels to a Fortinet device and this button was enabled, it would just basically land in your inbox, potentially, depending on how they handle a malformed AAR header. But what's funny enough is that even though ARC doesn't guarantee, like, the whole thing about ARC is chain of custody, it doesn't really tell you if the email was spoofed or not outside of that single header. Just ARC passing generally guarantees a better spam score. So pro tip for Red Team, just like make sure that the thing sending your phishing emails adopts ARC, and it'll pass, and you'll have a better spam score at the end of it. And what's funny also is that this opens up the blast radius a bit more because of ARC passing guaranteeing a better spam score, at least from our tests. You can also have a higher chance of spoofing domains that don't have any SPF and DMARC at all. Because when it lands in the inbox, not having an SPF and DMARC counts as neutral, but ARC passing gives you a -1 in terms of spam score. So you actually have a better chance of landing an email with this. And we tested this. So, and what's funny enough, throughout all this, I got an email saying my Black Hat CFP was accepted, even though I didn't even submit to the Black Hat CFP. Interesting. Well, no, I actually spoofed blackhat.com. So Blackhat.com apparently didn't have an SPF or DMARC record until sometime in February 2023 when I notified them about it. And because Mail Channels adopted ARC, and they didn't have an SPF and DMARC record, I could just send an email through Mail Channels and it would just land in my Proton Mail inbox because ARC passing contributes -1 to the spam score and not having an SPF and DMARC contributes 0 because it's neutral. And you can take a look at the headers here. You can see that this is the spoofed email from blackhat.com, like DMARC none, SPF none, ARC pass, right? So good, that even though it doesn't really mean that much, and DKIM none, right? And if you take a look at over here, you can see Proton Mail is great because it actually gives you insight into how they actually calculated the spam score as opposed to Gmail or Outlook or any of those. ARC allowed, ARC passing gives you -1, right? But no SPF, no DMARC, no DKIM is neutral. So it doesn't contribute at all to the spam score. So, and that -1 was enough for Proton Mail to consider it a good email. It's fine. And it just went straight to my inbox. As you can see from down here where it says the spam score is 1 and the action, just send it to inbox, right? No problem here. And this is where I give you a demo of this. So I'm just going to show you a video because they did somewhat fix this, thankfully, to an extent, which we'll talk about in a second. I think this is the most... Oh, okay. Well, here, this is the fun one. This isn't the most meaningful one. So this is me, like, because of the title of the talk, impersonating Satan from churchofsatan.com. So I'm sending myself an email as Satan, send air conditioning. Yeah, it's hot here. Like, please send air conditioning. It's hell. It's hot, right? Yeah, okay. And speed it up a bit. But yeah, there you go. Submit. And again, that's public. You can go to it now, too, even though it doesn't work anymore because they fixed it. And it just goes straight to your inbox right there. That's it. But this is the most meaningful one here, which demonstrates that, yeah, you can spoof emails even with DMARC and DKIM enabled. So in this case, we're spoofing an email from urbancrestohio.com. I don't know. I have nothing against Ohio, but they configured their email correctly, so this was a good test case. And you can see here they are using Mail Channels, right? So it's in their SPF. Oh, I wasn't supposed to show you that. Get out of there. In their SPF, and but if you take a look at their DMARC record, you'll see that they set it up correctly. They have everything set to reject. It's the DKIM. They implemented it. It's strict. All that good stuff. So I go to my handy dandy Cloudflare worker here and spoof an email from Urban Crest, Ohio. And then after a bit, you get an email. And then we go check the headers. And then you can see that SPF and DMARC are both passing. Even though we're spoofing the email. So let me open this back up. So full screen. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So in terms of disclosure time, I'm going to blow through this real quick. But as I mentioned, like we reached out in November 2022. They said there wasn't a bug, it wasn't an issue. Reached out again by Rapid7, said it wasn't an issue. Then I send them a notification notifying them in my DEF CON talk, and I'll be talking about this at other events as well. No response. Then in July 2023, they basically send me an email out of the blue saying, hey, we noticed you're talking at DEF CON and a bunch of other places. Can you give me details on what you found? And I'm like, guys, you've been talking with your CEO, for the past year. And they basically, and ironically, it turns out my emails were going to spam. So I should have used Mail Channels to send them the vulnerability notification, apparently. So how do they address this? So after my DEF CON talk, they addressed this by requiring their domain lockdown record. So this is a specific security control for mail channels that they implemented, which is yet another DNS text record that you can set up that basically allows you to specify which Cloudflare workers are allowed to send emails on their customers' behalf, or you can block mail channels from sending emails altogether, which I highly encourage everybody to do at this point, because if you're not using mail channels, who knows what these guys are going to come up with in the next year, because this was a work of art as it is right now. And then you can do that by just specifying v equals MC1 there, and that apparently will just block mail channels completely from sending emails. So originally, they still allowed emails to be sent, even without the domain lockdown record. So the domain lockdown record was optional, and if you didn't put it, anybody could still send emails from your domain. They made that the reverse recently, so thankfully. So now you actually have to have the domain lockdown record in place in order for you to send emails to Cloudflare workers. However, this is their business model. So what this means is that you can still go to their website, sign up for $80, and use the normal SMTP relay outside of Cloudflare workers, there's nothing to do with Cloudflare workers, to spoof all of their customers. That still works. And that's by design because, again, they don't do sender identity verification and they don't want to verify the domain ownership of their clients. That's just their business decision. So takeaways, if you're an org, make sure you should probably know if you're using mail channels or not. You can check your SPF record. I highly encourage you also to, even if you have a bunch of domains that aren't meant to send emails, I highly encourage you to actually put in an SPF record that denies email sending from those domains completely, and even if you're not using it for email. You can technically probably come up with some sort of solution that doesn't, like if you implemented DKIM, which is rare, but say you do implement DKIM, and you can display a banner that on an email, technically, if an email doesn't have a DKIM signature attached with it, but I've never seen that. I don't even know if it's possible, honestly. In terms of like email services specifically, because I'm assuming this is because the RFC is still experimental, I don't really know why they're bumping up the spam score, even just by ARC passing. I'm assuming it's because they haven't calibrated like the spam store correctly, and then maybe there's some confusion on like what ARC passing actually means. And it's really unclear like what they're doing with the AAR header, which is the header that records SPF, DKIM, and DMARC results. That's sort of like a black box. It's unclear like if that has any effect on any of this. And again, the big takeaway here is if you do decide to adopt ARC, you're at the mercy of anybody in the chain that doesn't do their job. So it's yet again relying on people completely understanding like what this protocol is meant to do. And if you're a transactional email service, for the love of everything, just do sender identity verification. Don't do what mail channels is doing, or use dedicated sending IPs. This is something that they don't want to do again for a business decision, but that's what everybody else does. And that's how they solve this entire problem. So it's a hard security control for this. And for email security generally, it's still very brittle, even though like the entire world relies on this, the business world especially, and it's pretty much held up by duct tape. It relies on people doing the right thing, it relies on organizations doing the right thing, and you have to sort of be a subject matter expert to configure the damn thing in the first place, which, is easy foot guns. And this whole ARC thing could also incentivize a potential trend of like trying to game the system in terms of actually getting better delivery rates. So huge shout out to these people, which I based this entire presentation on. And with that, questions?
Seems no. So, very thank you for this awesome and very funny talk, Marcello.